Well, here on Delmarva, the weather can be a bit unpredictable. Sometimes it's unseasonably hot, other times it's bitter cold, and we don't always know until the morning what's going to happen.
Or, of course, until our meteorologists tell us what we can likely expect. Another thing that's hard to predict, earthquakes.
Yeah.
But a new study says a childhood favorite of ours could give us a warning of when the next big one is coming. Over 7 decades, the slinky has entertained, but now it's educating.
Who walks the stair without a care and makes the happiest sound?
If you had told me, 5 years ago I'd be playing with slinkies as part of my physics education, I don't think I would have predicted it.
Student Alex Cook and his fellow lab partners were enlisted to help Dean Lively-Brook set up a slinky seismometer network.
The slinky seismometer is a working seismometer capable of detecting signals from earthquakes worldwide.
They just act as springs on a simple harmonic oscillator that is dampened by dampening feature on the bottom.
Besides being a cool tool, the slinky seismometer has practical purposes too, particularly when it comes to preparing for and recovering from an earthquake.
Well, we can't forecast per se, but what we can try to do is give our best estimate as to just how an earthquake might happen.
Using this software, you're able to figure out the epicenter of earthquakes.
The data from seismometers will give scientists valuable information that they can pass on to people planning earthquake routes for first responders and designers of earthquake-resistant buildings.
And you want to be right with that number. You don't want to get it low.
Another goal of the program, getting young people interested in science.
I think it opens the door for physics education for a lot of young people, which I think is exciting.
You ought to get a slinky.
And it's not just Lively-Brooks and his crew who get to play with toys all day. They're designing 3 units for some of the surrounding schools to use as well.
That is so cool. Well, thankfully, we don't have to worry too much about earthquakes here on Delmarva, although we did feel the impact of that one we got, and it actually originated in Virginia back in August of 2011. Many are speculating that the big one is past due for the West Coast. Recently, many thought it was going to hit Southern California, taking out a big portion of the Los Angeles area, but now experts are saying that it's set to hit farther north.
And although Delmarva has seen very few earthquakes in its history, there is often worry when it comes to hurricanes, tornadoes, and of course snow. Joining us today to tell us more of what the next several weeks look like is WBOC Chief Meteorologist Dan Satterfield. Dan, thanks for joining me.
Hey there. You know, slinkies are a great way to illustrate earthquake waves because there's 2 big types. There's what's called the push-pull, so you take a slinky and you go back and forth, and that's the push-pull waves. And then when you do this with the slinky, those are the waves that cause the ground to go up and down.
So we just talked about the big one coming to the West Coast.
Yeah,
what do you think?
This is a big misconception. People
Really?
think California is going to get hit by a big quake, and they are overdue in California, and it's going to be a big quake. But the biggest natural disaster in American history will be the quake that hits the Seattle area.
Really?
And it will be probably a 9.0. It will cause a massive tidal wave, and it will probably be by far the worst natural disaster to ever hit America. The last one was in January of 1700.
All right, so let's get back to Delmarva. Summer
Sure.
is winding down, and it's actually been a pretty mild season, right?
Yeah, we were slightly above normal. Our rainfall was pretty close to normal, although we haven't had a drop of rain in September. So far, we're having one of the warmest Septembers in years. New York yesterday had the hottest temperatures so late in the year since 1931, and it was hot here, but Boston hit 96, broke a record yesterday.
So what does that mean heading into the fall?
Well, probably doesn't mean much as far as that going into the fall, but the big thing that everyone's talking about, there's 2 things in meteorology right now. One is El Nino. The biggest El Nino ever was 1997. The El Nino that's underway right now is pretty much equal to that, and it's still getting stronger.
Is that what we're looking at right
there?
there?
Yeah, see that big yellow stripe along the equator? That is temperatures about 3 degrees to 5 degrees above normal. And there's another big factor. See the big yellow blob off the west coast? Meteorologists have a name for that. It's called the blob.
The blob, that is very scientific.
Yeah, and that's there because it's been so hot and so dry in California. The sunlight, the heat has actually warmed the ocean. That's going to probably go away this winter, and we're just going to be left with a very strong El Nino. But until it goes away, it may change this El Nino a bit.
It's been dry in California.
Yes.
It's been pretty dry here as well.
Yeah, we've been pretty dry here. California is probably going to get some relief. The problem, though, is El Niños tend to bring rain to central and southern California. To get the California out of drought, you really need the rain and snow up in the mountains in northern California. They're probably going to stay dry, and the Pacific Northwest is now having all those wildfires. El Niños give them even worse drought conditions. The other factor for our winter that we're unsure of, and that's the other elephant in the room, is the Arctic sea ice. When we had the big El Nino in 1997, there was a lot more Arctic ice up there. And I have a graph that I brought along to show you what the Arctic sea ice has been doing. And we're now getting close to the minimum for the year up there, and it's going to be about the 4th lowest ever. But that's what the Arctic sea ice has been doing since the 80s. And we know it's changing the weather patterns. We're just not sure how it's changing the patterns. We only have one big 97 El Nino to go by. That one means if we have a certain pressure pattern in the Atlantic, we could get real snow. Otherwise, it's going to be a stormy, wet winter. How much snow, we don't know yet.
What about hurricanes?
Well, that's easy. That's easy. Oh, yeah.
Not like El Nino. This one's
no,
actually...
El Nino, a strong El Nino kills hurricanes. There's too much wind shear in the Atlantic.
And the season ends in November, right?
Yeah, end of November, but we're at the peak time right now because the waters in the Atlantic are as hot as they're going to be right this week. You know, after I think the 9th or 10th, the hurricane season starts to drop. But I would not worry about hurricanes. We could have one, but the odds are really low. The wind shear is really high.
Sandy did hit in October, though.
Exactly, and in 1992 we had an El Nino, and we only had one hurricane that year, and that was Andrew. It wiped out South Miami.
What about snow? I know you love snow.
Oh yeah, there's no such thing as too much snow. And I even said that standing at the South Pole, on top of 2 miles of it. But you know, if we have a pattern in the Atlantic called the North Atlantic Oscillation. If you have an El Nino and the North Atlantic Oscillation goes negative, then you get big snowstorms. You get snowpocalypse. The question this winter is, we're going to have the El Nino. Will the NAO, as we call it, the North Atlantic Oscillation, turn negative? It's a pressure pattern in Greenland and the Atlantic. If that happens, watch out. If it stays mainly positive, we're going to have a cool, wet winter with not much snow.
Stay tuned.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting.
Meteorologist Dan Satterfield, thank you so much. And if you would like to learn more about what we discussed today, just visit our website, WBOC.com, and click on our picture at the top of the page.
Well, it's important to prepare more than your mind and your closet for their coming snow. Still ahead, we look into a few of the other things you need to start winterizing. Some you may not have expected, and of course the boat. Many of us here on Delmarva love to hit the water, but it's important to know what to do once the temps start sinking.
And later we get some help in the kitchen. We're learning how to make a pan-seared polenta, a delicious dish that will not only help your taste buds, but find out how it can help the entire community. And since we're talking a lot about the weather, did you ever think your body could predict it? Dr. Oz says, possibly.
Hi, I'm Dr. Oz. Can your pain predict the weather? Over 60% of Americans with arthritis say yes. According to one study, the connection may be real. Researchers found a slight increase in aches on days with high humidity. One way to get relief on days where the forecast calls for pain? Try topical capsaicin cream.